Hey, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. Good. Hopefully, it's not the middle of the night for you. I'm seeing in the chat some good. Do you know what? I confess that we did I'm not confessing that we did a boot camp before. But when we did the boot camp before, I talked to a lot of folks who were in APAC, or in Oceania, who are getting up in the middle of the night. So I'm so excited to see that this is a decent time for those of y'all in Australia and in Indonesia, and hopefully not a bad time for you in India. Good morning, my loves. So, yesterday we took a look at HTML. And if you remember correctly, HTML is a language, it's a hypertext markup language that uses these little spiky braces, and it lets us put our content on our website for users to look at. Today, we're going to be taking a look at a different language. We're going to be learning a little bit of CSS. And remember with HTML, don't worry if you missed yesterday. It's not a big deal. Everything's fine. The video is going to be up on the Class Central YouTube if you want to go back and check that. Today, we're going to be doing the second section in the boot camp, or the second section in the free code camp curriculum, which is starting to learn some CSS. If you haven't done all the HTML, super fine and chill. You can catch up later. Everything's going to be okay. The world is so big and so stressful that stressing out about programming, it's just not on, is it? Let's go ahead and take a look at this. Hey, so I'm logged into freecodecamp.org. Yeah, if you're not logged in, this is a really good time to get logged in or sneakily signed up if you haven't yet. And you might be saying, well, Jess, obviously we're doing the web design certification. Cool, cool, cool. We are, but we're doing the beta version. We're going to come all the way down to the bottom. Look at all these different things. We're going to be working from here because this is designed project ways. Project ways? This is going to be designed around projects, which I think is a really fun way to learn. I'm going to come down. And yesterday we started this together, and I asked for you to go ahead and try and finish it on your own. If you got stuck or if you haven't had time to finish, good news. Good news. Everything's still fine. Go ahead and still try and finish it on your own, and you can ask for help in the forum. I've got a very, very fantastic assistant with me today, or colleague. Can I get you to throw the URL for the forum up on the thing? If you're just joining us from the stream and you're not part of the bootcamp, still super chill. Head over to classcentral.com and you can sign up and join us there. It's all free. There's literally no way to pay us. Please don't try and pay us. I guess you could try and pay Mervyn, my lovely colleague, but don't try and pay me. So we're going to start learning basic CSS by building a cafe menu together. Cool. And this is going to look at a bunch of HTML elements that we would have learned in yesterday's class, or we would have learned in yesterday's homework. So if you haven't finished the homework and some of these are unfamiliar, it's cool. Be cool. Everything's as cool as it's going to get. Oh, we've got some folks saying they've already finished the cafe menu, in which case, Deo, you say you've already finished. You're going to have to help me because I'm terrible at CSS. Yeah. So we're going to build this. Let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start coding. And do you know what? Sometimes I'm going to talk to you very briefly about my least favorite internet argument. Sometimes you'll hear like very deadly serious developers say, HTML is not a programming language, or CSS is not a programming language. And there's some arguments for or against that, but really, if you've gotten this far, you're a web developer, hey, and you're a programmer, you should absolutely proudly say that you are. And if anybody tries to tell you, well, that's not real programming, you just send them to me and I'll fight them for you. Yeah. So we would have learned, so there's a basic structure that we need to put together for our HTML. So right now, if you see up at the top, this is our index.html file. Cool. So what we're going to do is, our browser is just really a type of file viewer, isn't it? How weird. It's a specialized file viewer. And what we're doing when we say doc type at the top of our file is we're telling the browser that sees it, hey, I'm giving you a document. And it says, yeah, 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 cool. And the document type I'm giving you is HTML. Chill. And what we're going to do after this is we're going to make an HTML element. I'm going to close that as well. Yeah. That feels okay. Let's go ahead and check our code here. This is telling us this was absolutely fine. So we've got our doc type HTML. We're declaring what kind of document we're giving it. And we're opening and closing the HTML element that's going to contain everything else. Everything's chill. So let's just bop on to step 2. It feels like everything's going to continue to be fine. Here we can see where we're at in the middle of our HTML. We've got our HTML element opened here. And let's create a head element. And our head element, let's close it as well. We love to close these elements. Our head element's going to keep things like our title and our metadata. I don't know if someone asked me, I can't remember. I'm rubbish. Someone asked a really good question about metadata yesterday, about like, do we still use that? And I was really excitingly wrong. I think that'll be it for our head element. Oh, so we can add our title element. Oh, you know what? I didn't read this correctly. So we've got our head element started. We've got our title element. I'm going to put these on different lines just so that it's easy for me to sort of mentally parse it. Yeah, super chill. And our title element, the title, the text that goes between our 2 title tags should be Camper Cafe Menu. Because I'm a programmer and all programmers are a little bit lazy, I'm going to copy that using Control Z and paste it using Command V. I'm going to check our code. Our title element should be nested in our head element. I mean, it is. I think what's going on is maybe so what this is doing is it's got a bunch of different tests that run for us. Maybe the tests expect to see title on the same line, right? The tests expected to see title on the same line. I might put the opening and closing tags on different lines, but clearly FreeCodeCamp disagrees with me. And they run the tests, so they're the boss. We're going to submit our code and go on to the next challenge. Everything is incredibly easy today, right? Nothing bad can happen today. So the title is one of several elements that provide extra information that's not visible on the web page. So it doesn't show up as text on its own, but if you look at the top of this window that you're viewing me in right now, if you're on YouTube, it'll probably say something. What does the title say on YouTube? Does it say Let's Learn CSS, or does it say YouTube Let's Learn CSS? And if you're watching on Twitch, it'll be something similar. It'll say, I don't know what the title is going to be on that. But here, it's going to be the text that displays in the little tab, isn't it? So that's what's going to be. So the title for that is going to be Let's Learn CSS, part of the free Webdev Bootcamp. If you're over on YouTube, apparently, very, very relaxing. We're also going to add a meta element, which is what somebody asked about yesterday, which was absolutely perfect and prescient. It's very forward thinking. And we're going to set meta and start a meta tag. And the meta elements are self-closing, which means I don't have to add a closing tag with a slash. It's another one of those irregular self-closing elements. Easy to forget. I would have to look these up all the time. It's fine to look these up. Does anybody remember where the best place to look up HTML elements is? Let me know in the chat if you remember. So we're going to create an attribute for this called character set, char set. It's equal to UTF-8. Yeah, everybody's saying MDM, Mozilla Web Docs, same thing, perfect. I really like MDN. Somebody's saying W3 schools, which is also a really good way to do it. I really like MDN personally, just because it's sort of the dictionary of how to build for the web. I think they do a really good job over there. When we say our character set, we're setting our meta. So we're saying, hey, this is the information I need to give you as a browser. If you're a browser, I want to give you this information, these meta tags, to let you know how to read this website. And when I say the character set, I'm saying, hey, I'm using UTF-8 characters here. And I want to make sure I'm using a respectful level of abstraction here. Character encoding and Unicode and all of that is a big separate field. So UTF-8, I'm just going to abstract that away. Oh, somebody makes a good point. You can't add spaces around the. Oh, I didn't know that. That's very cool. Oh, in the free code camp course, yeah. So UTF-8, we could talk about that. You're so welcome to look it up on your own. But for now, we're just going to know, hey, that's a type of way to present text. It's all chill. Let's check our code. I'm gently confident this is fine. And this is fine. Let's go on to the next one. So this is a reminder that Free Code Camp supplies the curriculum. It has nothing to do with the bootcamp. We're separate sets of people. And they're a charity. They're a nonprofit. If you want to, and if you have the money, it's a really cool thing to donate. Yeah. But don't you dare spend money you don't have. If you don't have it now, you can go ahead and donate if you want to later on after you're a fancy web developer. Oh, somebody's suggesting it might be better to add character set before the title. I haven't seen that before, but that seems really reasonable. I absolutely and unquestionably believe you. And here's what it's done is it's actually moved those around, which really suggests that you were absolutely right. I love to be wrong. So we're going to put the same way we've got a head element here, we're going to create a body element just super heckin' fast. And that's where the rest of our HTML is going to go. And we're probably going to make a main element right after this, I bet. We're going to check our code. Everything's fine. And look at this. So we're going to add an we're not adding a main yet. We're going to add an H1 element. And we did this together yesterday, didn't we? That's the most important header on your page. There's usually just one. Yeah. And here, the title, or the title that we can see, the title that's going to show on text. And I bet it's going to show right on the side of our page in a heartbeat as soon as I put a C. Very rewarding, isn't it? It's really great to get that real-time sort of feedback from HTML. And it looks like it wants this in all caps, which I personally disagree with very politely. It's a very aggressive way to handle text, isn't it? But we're going to check our code, and everything continues to be fine. Look at what an incredibly mellow Tuesday it is. So for some reason, we think it's very compelling. We think that our menu has to tell people that this was founded in 2020. What a terrible time. What a scary time to found a cafe. We're going to start a P tag. We're going to add the text established 2020. I mean, good for them if they opened in 2020 and they're still in business A. We did a P tag yesterday. That feels pretty solid. Go ahead and do that. Yeah. Actually, we're going to save most of our questions for the end, but I want to just very quickly zip in. And Emmanuel's got a good question saying, what's wrong with me putting the meta tag after the title tag? And I'm only going to answer this very, very quickly because I think it's an important core concept. It's not super wrong. It's not going to break anything because HTML is really fault tolerant. It's best practices, I think, to put the meta tag in front of the title tag. And I didn't know this until Ephedrus pointed this out. Sorry if I've got your name wrong, my love. And the concept of best practices is something that's really important. And that's just saying, hey, we've agreed as an industry, or the standards bodies, W3C, who help make HTML, have agreed that doing it this way is the most correct way to do this. Sometimes that's just so that it's the most efficient for the browser, but sometimes it's just to say, hey, we've agreed on doing it this way so that people can, know that they can expect to see it. Yeah. So, since the P element added in the previous step provides supplemental information about the cafe, we're going to wrap this in a header element. And notice that head and header are two different things. Head contains our meta tag and our title. So head is stuff that's not being shown on the page, whereas header is stuff that's being shown on the page. And we use a different header. We make this element. It's not showing anything different. It doesn't change what we can see, but it means that somebody who's using assistive technology, maybe like a screen reader or who's navigating using a keyboard press, is going to have an easier time telling the difference between the header information and the main sort of part of the page. And it makes it easier for search engine. Oh, look at that. Fine. Everything continues to be fine. Let's add our main element. Our main element is where we put the main part of the page, the main information. Don't worry if we're going super fast. And don't worry if you don't remember this the first time or the 5th time or the 10th time. The thing about programming, and this is such a mean thing to say, is just gets easier the more you do it. It's really, you know what? That's absolutely perfect. You just need to do it again and again and again. You remember being a little kid and people would say, you'll understand when you're older. That's kind of how programming works. We've got our main tag that opens and closes. We're going to check our code. Everything's fine. But really, the more you program, the older you get in programming, the easier it gets. I really like the beta curriculum because it has us focus a lot on the structuring. Do our doc type, do our HTML, do our head, set up our body, set up our header, set up our main. And now we're going to create 2 sections. And I think this semantic dividing, and remember, we learned yesterday that semantic is a big, scary word. And we're really going to think about that as well-structured HTML that's easy for not just people, but easy for machines to read. We're going to open a section tab. We're going to close our section tag. And that makes 1 section element. We're going to do that again because we've been asked to make 2. And these are empty. This is not a huge deal so far. Ooh, Rajesh is asking the best question. What about the indentation? That's such a good question, and I live for this. Thank you. Check out how our indentation's done here, because this is really useful. This is our top level. So this is a declaration. And then our top level element is the HTML. That's sort of, and sometimes you'll hear that called root, which is very, is main root or is HTML root? I'll look that up in a minute. And then we've got our child elements. So and parent and child is a concept we're going to come back to again and again. Raise your hand or say, hey, if you're taking JavaScript at the same time. If you are, that is going to wear y'all out. But Ramon is a much better teacher than I am. This concept of parent and children is going to exist in JavaScript as well. And really, a parent means the top level. So here, HTML is the parent element, and the head lives inside. So it's the child that lives inside. And we've indented that over so that we can see at a glance. Okay, well, head is tabbed over. It's the child. Oh, meta is tabbed over. It must be the child of the head. It doesn't break anything to do the indentation, but what it does do is it just makes it a lot easier for us as humans. If you're not a human, your business. If you are a very fancy robot and you don't need this, good for you. But this indentation's just to make it more human readable. Isn't that chill? So we've created both of our sections. We're going to check our code. Everything's fine. Yeah. A lot of you are taking JavaScript at the same time. You all better take a lot of breaks over the weekend, though. Yeah. Cool. My beautiful assistant has indeed pointed out that HTML is the root element, which is what I thought and then doubted myself on. Whew. All right. We're going to create an H2 element in the section element. And remember that these headers, H1, H2, H3, they're going to have different sizes by default, but we don't pick them based on size. We pick them based on importance. So usually there's only one H1 element. Yeah. And then under the H1s, the second most important elements are these H2s. Yeah. If you want them to be bigger or smaller, we can change that later using CSS. But we're going to create an H2 element. I see somebody who's just joined us asking where you can code along. I'd love you to. You should head over to freecodecamp.org. And fabulous. There's also the sign up for the whole bootcamp, which has just got into chat for you. So we're creating a H2 section called coffee. And you might notice that when we saw the preview earlier was beautiful. And y'all are going to be way too nice to me, but this is not beautiful, is it? It'll get beautiful soon. So we're going to add we've been doing HTML this whole time. And I promised you CSS, which is really rubbish, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to come into the head element here, and I'm going to create a style element. And we're doing this. We're going to open it. We're going to close it. And those of you who've done some web development say, Jess, wouldn't I usually create a separate CSS file? You absolutely would. So here we're putting our CSS in our HTML, which is a little bit old-fashioned. And we're doing this really to abstract away some of the confusion of how do I make my files? How do I link to my files? Here, we're just sort of abstracting that away for a while. We can talk about that in the forum. We could talk about that in the question and answer. But here, we're going to keep it simple just for the sake of learning the syntax. The syntax is like the grammar for programming. So HTML and CSS are going to feel super different. We can add the style of an element by specifying it inside the style element, right? So here, all of our CSS is going to go inside these two style blocks, yeah? And when you're looking at a file and you want to know which part of this is the HTML and which part of this is the CSS, the spiky babies, very, very technical term, isn't it, for those pointy braces? The spiky babies are usually going to say that this is HTML, right? Whereas these swoopy curly babies, these curly braces, the fancy braces, are usually going to let us know that that's going to be CSS. Yeah, Sadiq points out, oh wait, should the style tag should be in the head tag, somebody's pointed out, and that's absolutely what we've done here. So the head tag closes right after the style tag. You are absolutely perfectly right. So this is a selector. And this has given us a very abstract way of looking at it. So here where it says element, I'm going to type the name of the HTML element that I want to style. Then I'm going to add my curly braces. Then I'm going to add my CSS property. And CSS properties are really important. CSS properties are like I like to think of CSS as a puppy, because puppies are cute and puppies aren't scary, whereas I'm terrible at CSS. It's all a bit scary. But puppies also can be a little bit hard to control, right? But think about properties as the tricks your CSS puppy already knows. And you say, Jess, but I don't know any of the CSS properties. I don't know what tricks this puppy knows. Can anybody guess where I'd like you to look? Where can you look up all of the CS properties, do you think? I bet you know. So here we're going to use the selector, the name of the element we want to style. Here's the property, the name of the trick. It already knows. People are already yelling MD and after my own heart. And here we're going to add the value. So here we're saying element. So I'm going to say I want you to do this trick, and I want you to do it in this way. Yeah? Cool. Let's try this. So we're going to center our H1 element, and that's a good keyword, our H1 element. So I've got H1, which is the name of our element we're going to do something with, and then our curly brace. The property, the trick we're going to do is text align. And you're going to see this hyphen all the way through, isn't it? We're going to add that's a colon, a semicolon? Y'all shouldn't get me first thing in the morning. One of the double dot. Yeah, so colon and then a semicolon. It's too early. Y'all do not get me at my best. So we've got H1 is the element we're using. Text align is the property. Text align is the trick where we're saying, H1, do the text align trick. You know it. And the way I want you to do the text align trick is as soon as I put center down, it was like, you know what's going on. I'm going to center this. I am a absolutely calm and obedient puppy. Let's check our code. Everything's fine, even though CSS is a little bit scary and weird at first. It's not here to hurt us. Let's submit our code. I'm a deadly serious adult, so I'm drinking hot chocolate while I chat to you. So, in our previous step, what we did here is we used a CSS selector. Cool. To style it. We're going to go ahead and continue to do the same thing with a new type selector. We're going to center our P elements and our H2. And I'm going to show you a couple different ways to do this. Yeah, I'm going to show you the lazy way to do it. Then I'm going to show you the right way to do it. So what do we think? Can I have multiple selectors here? If I say P here, ooh, that doesn't work at all. So it's absolutely possible to be a little bit too lazy and break it. So that way that I tried to show you first didn't work at all. But it gives me a great chance to talk to you about what you should do when you don't know what will happen. I say, can I just stack multiple things here? Ooh, I can. Can I just stack H2 as well? I absolutely can. So when you don't know, you say, oh, will it work when I do blank? You've really got 3 different options. You can look it up, usually on MDN, right? You can experiment, and that's my favorite one. You can just get weird. I always want you to get weird. Or you can ask an adult. And because the adult you're going to be asking is often me, you're probably best served getting weird. Experimenting is never a bad idea. So we know that we could use a comma and do, but we've been told to do a new type selector for each one. And that kind of implies, oh, heck. Computers, everything's crashed. There we go, I'm back. Everything's fine. And Sadiq makes a really good point. He said, well, we could do that, but it's told us right here to make a new type selector for each one. So I bet the tests won't let us. Yeah. And you might think that's really unfair of free code. But maybe in the real world, the real world, maybe your boss would tell you what to do or what style you want. So what we're going to do here is, because all programmers are a little bit lazy, energy efficient is good. I'm going to create a separate selector for each one of these, just like it asked me to, but I'm going to copy and paste the text align center because I don't want to. I'm lazy. So we've got folks saying, oh, hey, could I do it with the comma? You could. It'll absolutely work. And in the real world, on your own projects, why not? Nobody can tell you what to do. But here it said, make a new type selector for each one. And we love to follow the rules, don't we? So we're going to scroll down, check our code, and it says, beautiful, babe. This absolutely works. Nice. So now that we have 3 type selectors with this, hey, look at this, with the exact same styling, we can now group them together just like we did before. So this told us to do it the long way, just to get us used to the syntax. And now it said, ha ha ha, psych. Look, you actually can do this using a comma. I'm going to tell you a secret, which is not a secret, which is the thing that, and you might be different. I'm not saying every programmer has to like this, but many programmers, our favorite things to do in the whole world are to delete code. You say, no, Jess, it broke. And I say, well, yeah, but it's cool. Breaking things is fine. Breaking things is how we learn. And this is telling us to go ahead and do this with the commas this time. So H1, comma, H2, comma, B. And we could put these in any order. I've just put them biggest to littlest to make it a little bit more human readable. We could check our code this time, and it still says we're fine. It still says everything's fine. Honestly, in 2022, if somebody says stuff's fine, it's all right. So we've styled 3 elements. And this works. Ooh, perfect. We talked about this really briefly. So we put our CSS inside of style tags, right? And here it's saying, cool, that works. But because the CSS code will get really long really quickly, we think that we're going to go ahead and start using this in separate ones. So here's our style CSS. And here's our index.html. Oop. Start by rewriting the styles you have created into the style CSS file. Cool. So this is telling us to just go ahead and do everything we just did. Umar, this is a really good question you're asking. Would it be okay to ask you to go ahead and ask that at the end of the class just to make sure I don't forget that? I'm not trying to ignore you. It's just really, really good. And I don't want to ignore that, but I also don't want to lose my flow. I'm a very mean teacher. So here it says, start by rewriting the styles you've created into the CSS file. And we're in a sandbox here. And remember, a sandbox is an artificial coding environment that takes away some of the hard stuff. So here, to tab between them, here, if I have both of these black, means that I'm looking at both my HTML file and my CSS file at the same time. So here, I can copy what I've done here. H1, H2. It's a little bit crowded, isn't it? Can we spread that out? Still a little bit crowded, isn't it? But what we're going to do is, and because I'm lazy, of course, you are not lazy. You are hardworking and dedicated. But me, I'm like, I'm going to copy paste that. Since I've copied it over, I can get rid of my index HTML and just take a look at the CSS here. I like this in the beta much more than in the old curriculum because it gives us the file structure, the feeling of here's my HTML file, here's my CSS file, here's how they hang out together, which is super chill. Let's check and see if that's what it wanted. Yes. So, hey, we get to delete it. We get to delete it. We are going to say, well, we've made a separate CSS file. We're going to get rid of these style tags because they're redundant. They both do the exact same thing. So having 2 of them, they might crash. We're just going to push delete. Isn't that satisfying? To be a code murderer, to just kill it. Just ha 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 ha. And once it's removed, it's shifted back to the left. And you say, well, Jess, it shouldn't do that. It's got a CSS file now. The same code is in the CSS file. Why has that gotten rid of our styling? I say, we've got a CSS file, but right now our HTML file doesn't know about it. Let's go on to the next thing. So right now, our CSS file and our HTML file, they're not friends yet. They don't know about each other. We need to create a link, yeah, inside the head element. I think we could put that anywhere, but I'm probably going to put it under the, and somebody fuss at me if we can't put it anywhere. I'm going to put it under the meta. So I'm going to make a link element, and we know enough about elements to know that, if it says a link element, I might try just writing link. And here the attribute rel is equal to, and the attribute rel is set to style sheet. Really what I'm doing when I do this is say, hey, HTML, I'm making a link. And what kind of link? The relevant, it's a style sheet. Yeah. And then we've got a ref. And you remember from when we talked about links yesterday that the ref is sort of, we think of it as the sound of throwing an anchor, but it's really the hypertext reference. So it's where you can find this information. Our CSS file is called style CSS. So I can say, hey, go and get the style CSS. And as soon as hang on, as soon as we fully type style CSS, as soon as it knows where to get it, it'll get it. Oh, that's a good question. Is link a self-closing tag? I think it is. Yeah, I think it's self-closing. But what do we do when we're not sure? We can ask an adult, which is me, and I never know. Link. Yeah, that's self-closing. I just wanted to double check where I was like, you could close it. I don't think it'll do anything. So let's go ahead and check our code. Oh, it is self-closing. I mean, it's, if anybody wants to help me, I think this is right. What have I done wrong? Oh, you mean it's self-closing like it's got the little tag at the end? Oh, I haven't. Okay. Y'all like how I did exactly 2/3 of this. It's also got the type. I completely forgot the type. Y'all are patient as the day is long. So the type is text CSS. Now we got it. And I'm going to pretend that I did this on purpose. We all know I didn't. That even elderly programmers get to constantly make mistakes. Let's try this one more time. We've got a link. The rel is set to style sheet. The ref, the hypertext reference, goes to style CSS. The type is text CSS. And I feel like it's self-closing now. Everything's fine. Yeah, I think we do need that backslash at the end. Otherwise, it just says no. We're to go on to our next challenge. Oh, we've got a really good question. What other kinds of types might we be able to use here? And I think because I'm going to be hopping around, I'm just going to drop in the reference for this because I bet the MDN will have it. Okay, this is important. And we're going to learn more about this later on. This is really the concept of responsive design. So, who here can you yell at me about what kind of device? So, not Linux or Mac, or so not your operating system like Windows or Mac OS or Linux, and not your browser, which might be Chrome or Firefox. But what kind of device, what kind of physical thing are you watching this on? Are you on a laptop? Are you on a big box computer? Who's on a phone? So just in the chat while I talk to you about responsive design and screen sizes. Yeah. So things like mobile. Oh, some of you might be on tablets. Yeah. So people can be on all types of different hardware. Ooh, iPad Pro. Somebody's fancier than me. And when we create experiences on the web, one thing we want to be really, really respectful of is that people are running different kinds of hardware. People have different kinds of connections. And one thing we really want to think about when we design, and CSS is really designy, isn't it? Is we want to think about the screen sizes. So some of you are watching me on a little bitty screen. That's where I look best. Good for you. And some of you are watching on this great big monitor. And some of you are on YouTube, some of you are on Twitch. Both of those handle responsive design. Somebody's saying you're watching me on a smartwatch. Is that even a thing? I'm a very old lady. That's very science fiction to me. But we're going to add a meta element with a special content attribute. And here, the meta name is, so we're going to make, wait, can we do this as a separate one? One thing we're going to do is we're just going to copy and paste this, I think. Oh, heck. And as we copy and paste this, let's talk about it. I would think that putting that in the same meta tag with the character set makes sense, isn't it? But it says add the following within the head element. Okay. You need to add a meta element. Cool. And what this is doing is this is saying, hey, we want you to keep the styling similar, even if the scale changes. So here what we're saying is, here's a meta tag. The name, so really what we're doing here is this is about a viewport. Here you just need to copy and paste it. The content here is going to, the width of the content is going to be equal to the width of the device. And here we're saying, keep the scale the same. So however wide the screen is, use that width. And then from there, extrapolate how high you want this content to be by keeping it a 1 point. Don't stretch it is really what we're saying here. Let's check our code. All right. They wanted a separate meta tag. I think it would work if I combine these, but I'm not going to mess with it. Rajesh, you're thinking the same thing I'm thinking, aren't you? Right? Like we should be able to do that, right? Yes, that also works. So the text is centered. So the link to the CSS file is working. We can leave our HTML alone for a minute, right? Now, let's get weird. We're going to make it brown. And one thing that's really cool is when we created all of these structural elements, let's look at them again. Go away, CSS. When we created all these structural elements like head, head doesn't really count. We can't really style that in CSS. That's the information that doesn't live on our screen. But when we created the body tag, that's actually creating a big rectangle. And it's a rectangle that covers our whole visible page, but we can style that. And we created the header here. That creates a box that we can style. And each of these sections is a conceptual box that we can style. I'm going to mess around a bit. I'm going to experiment a little bit to sort of show you what I mean here. So here, what it's asking us to do, and we could do it real fast just to show you what the actual assignment says, but we're going to spend a little bit of time getting weird. So the body, background color, and y'all are like, no, Jess, don't get weird. Just show us how to do it. No. The background color is brown. Oof, that's a very red brown. But that's it. That's what it's asked us to do here. But I don't want to do this. Can I comment out CSS? I completely forgot how to do CSS comments. I'm going to say, Jess, how can you forget how to do CSS comments? Are you just terrible at everything? I am just terrible at everything. And the nice thing is, if you get really chill about being bad at stuff, nobody can hurt you. You're pretty much invulnerable. Y'all are way up. You're like, no, Jess, you remember it's the slashes and the star. Oh, I'm so sorry. That's what I get for saying, once you get used to looking silly in public, nothing can hurt you. Fate had to hurt me for getting a little bit brave. It's very bad, isn't it? So we've got our assignments done. So to pass step 19, I would just have to uncomment this, and I think we could do it. But instead, I'm going to get weird. So we're going to use the CSS selector for section. I want to show you that exists, that these, I want to try and convince you. I'm absolutely evangelical around this weird idea. And it seems really weird for me to be talking to you about philosophy, but I'm going to talk to you about philosophy a lot. When you're doing stuff in HTML,
everything is rectangles. Everything is invisible or visible rectangles. When you make an element, a new element on the page, if you can see it, it's a rectangle, whether or not you believe me. So, and somebody's asked, why'd you add these comments? I've added these comments to make this code not work. If I take that away, it'll go back to being brown. But I want to comment that code out for a moment. Just because I want to show you. Ooh, Ashwari, you're amazing. Can we use hex code? Yes, we haven't learned hex code yet, but we'll get there. There are 4 different ways we're going to learn to do code. Or for learn to do color in CSS. We've got the keyword here. We're going to learn to do hex codes, which always feels a little bit like magic. We're going to learn to do RGB. And then we're going to learn to do a variation on RGB, which feels, and we'll learn to make it more or less see-through, which is cool. But hang on, I want to prove to you that these are all rectangles. Background color, we're going to turn that section pink. We're going to turn that section pink. Look at that. Look at that. Rectangle. Okay, Jess. Well, sure, a section's a rectangle. That sounds like something that would be a rectangle. But what about our P element? Our P element definitely isn't a rectangle. I say, oh yeah? Look how bad I typed. Rectangle. Everything rectangles. The philosophy of rectangles will absolutely haunt. Hey, perfect. Box model. We're going to learn about box models. We're going to learn about box models and grids. But really, the weird thing that I want you to conceptually fight with in your head is it's all rectangles all the way down. Everything's made of rectangles when it lives on the web. You say, what about a circle? I say, no, it's just a real curvy rectangle. You say, Jess, you're talking nonsense. I am talking nonsense, but it's all rectangles. So we've got our brown. It's an ugly brown, so hopefully we're going to deal with that brown in a second. And I'm going to get rid of our index, our HTML code, just so we can see a little bit better. Yeah, everything's chill. Step completed. Sorry to take you on that little bit of a detour where we talk about the magic of rectangles. So this brown, Free Code Camp agrees. It says this brown is a lot. We're going to change the body element's background color to burlywood, which is a word I have never seen written down before. Ooh, look at that. Look at, did you? Ooh, it's giving us a little hex picker right here in the sandbox. Ooh. So we've got a really good question, which I'm going to answer while how do you remember these and not forget as a new learner? You will forget them all the time and it's fine. I am 700,000 years old. I've been doing HTML since before CSS existed. You say, oh, how can you still be alive? You're so old. I forget things all the time. I just forgot how to do a comment in CSS. It's super okay to forget. And anybody who would make fun of you for forgetting, let me know and I will personally, I'm not going to travel. I will remember them forever and I will yell at them on the internet someday. I can't fight them in person until travel comes back. Also, I'm an old lady. You don't want me fighting nobody. So yeah, burlywood, which is apparently a real color keyword, which I have never heard of before, exists. And it's this sort of cream color. That's chill. Everything's chill. So somebody was asking earlier about divs, and I'm really excited that we're doing divs. Divs are, what do you think I'm going to say? I've just been absolutely aggressively screaming at you like everything is rectangles. What do you think a div is? Yeah, Bab, it's a rectangle. So divs are empty rectangle boxes. Babes, don't swear. Just being mean to the chat. Yep, a div is a rectangle. Come here, after my own heart. I've said everything's a rectangle. What is this? And you're like, rectangle. Oh, and we've got this is really good. It's a rectangle that's a container. I love this. This is an empty box. And we can make these empty boxes and leave them empty if we want to style them, but we can put stuff inside them. I love you. Ooh, we're previewing some because we're going to learn a lot about accessibility later. Divs can be really messy for accessibility. They're a tool but they can be a tool we overuse a lot. So they're an empty box, but we've got more specific types of boxes. Cindy, these are so what's the difference between a div and a section? A section is also an empty box, but it's more specific. And wherever possible, you want to use the most specific box. So if you're creating a new section of your website, don't make a div, make a section because that's more specific. That carries more meaning. Yeah. If you're creating an article, you say, well, the article element exists. I'm not going to use a div. I'm going to use this article because it carries more meaning. So, yeah, beautiful. I love this. We're going to keep coming back to this word semantic. And semantic means that it carries meaning. So, section is more semantically valuable than div. Article is more semantically valuable than div. Yeah, so divs are really powerful, but there's this temptation to overuse them. Whenever you're saying, hey, should I use a div here or something else? That's a good opportunity to go to MDM and look at the different types of options. Yeah, just because the more specific you can be, the more semantic your HTML will be. And you know what? I'm going to quiz y'all on the fly. So, semantic, just remember that that's a fancy computer way to say it carries meaning. It's easier for people and computers to understand. So, semantic carries meaning. Semantic carries meaning. Y'all are so patient. So, we're going to create a div inside our body element, and then we're going to move all the other elements inside the new div. Whew. So, inside our body, that means right under here, we've got two different ways we could do this, right? We could do it exactly. So a div you've got to open and close. It's not self-closing. We could do it exactly like it says, where we say, okay, well, I could take all of these, not me, just we take all of these, and I could cut, and I could paste this inside a div. That's exactly what it told me to do, right? But I'm going to put everything back. Really, the way I would do this normally, cutting and pasting, it feels kind of conceptually messy. I would probably open a div, and then I would take it down, and I would close it down where I want that to exist. So here it says copy and paste. Here it says move. But really, oh, heck. We're going to close it. I'm going to create the closing tag where I want it closed. Yeah. Let's try our code. Let's see if it'll accept this, even though I haven't copied and pasted. Are we good? Are we good? Oh, we're good. Everything's fine. CSS is so hard. And it's so hard to learn all of these, but really, it can't hurt you. We're just playing around on the computer. Nothing too bad can happen here. And if you manage to completely mess everything up in a really, really dramatic way, we've got this restart step button right here. And I like this because this previews the idea of, oh gosh, I've had a little bit of a brain fluff. What is Git? It's, what do you call it where you could change a file but then go back in time? Oh, it's a very, very fundamental part of programming. Oh, it's version control. Oof. It's a good thing I didn't say that live on air with a couple hundred people and completely forget what version control is called. This sandbox environment, yeah. So people are saying, yeah. So we've got time machine, version control, source control, and these are all sort of the same thing. And this is saying, really, somebody Archie's saying, oh, it's a time machine, and that's really the vibe we're going for here. If we screw something up, we can go back in time to a different version. So we're going to be Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays, we have class. Thursdays, we have a guest lecturer, and those are going to be joining us at all different times. This Thursday, we're going to have Zach and Barb, who are joining us to, thank you very much, Barbara Oakley, Zach Caceres, are going to be joining us to talk about how programmers can learn better. But then next Thursday, we're having somebody from GitHub coming to talk to us about what version control means, which is going to be really exciting. Everything's chill. Sorry, I'm all over the place. We're going to make a div and not have it take up the entire width of the page. So we're going to make a div. We're going to make a new selector for our div. So selector selects, and we'll learn a little bit more about um, the difference between selectors and classes later on. But right now we're just using selectors. And this means any H1 element on our page will follow these rules. Any div on my page will follow these rules. What trick, looking at this, what trick will our CSS puppy be asking div to do? Oh, so we've got somebody who's got the most fantastic name. Achilles is asking, what browser will we use? You can use the browser you want to use best for all of this class. Um, the trick we're asking this puppy to do is width, and we're going to set that to 300 pixels. Oh heck, feels a little weird, doesn't it? Yeah. Let's see if that was right. That feels a little off kilter, isn't it? I bet we're going to want to do a little bit more magic. So it absolutely doesn't matter what browser you're using. It's really which one you're most comfortable with. I'm having to use Chrome because it works best with our streaming software. I'm personally a little bit of a privacy weirdo, so I'm a Firefox girl myself. Um, but you should really use what works best for you. Yeah, Chrome or Firefox. Some people really like Brave. I'm hearing really nice things about Edge and Vivaldi these days as well. Oh, this is a really good chance to. You love how y'all really want to get through this, and I want to talk to you about big core concepts, the worst teacher. When we're creating websites or web experiences, one thing that's really important is to remember that our users might be on a whole bunch of different browsers. So, as a web developer, having versions of these downloaded and looking at your website, oh, hey, I think I'm done with my website, or I'm halfway through. Let's see what it looks like in Edge, or let's see what it looks like in Firefox. Most of these browsers are designed to mostly handle HTML and CSS in the same kinds of ways. But because they're different um, programs made by different they could be a little bit weird. Cross-browser testing is a fancy way to say, I'm going to look at my website in a bunch of different browsers and make sure it works. It is a best practice. It's a good practice for building web design. We've already previewed. What does a comment look like in CSS? It looks like this. Let's go ahead and let's just take a look at that again because I forgot. And we're going to comment this out. And what happens when we comment that code out is it doesn't work. Yeah. Let's check our code. Everything's chill. Oh, Kamir makes a really interesting point that almost all browsers except for Firefox are going to be based on Chromium. And this is a bit more of a technical point than we're going to go into in the moment. But it means that the sort of core of what they're built around, most modern browsers, are really, really similar. It's really interesting if you want to look that up and learn more about how browsers work, but probably a little bit beyond the scope of what we're going to do. So we are going to be wrapping up in a little while. Let's do one or two more of these. And then I'm going to be so happy to answer your questions. Or we can just drink coffee and chat about things like, oh, what are browsers like and how do browsers work? And it'll be a lot of me looking stuff up, isn't it? So we're going to make the background color of this div element Burlywood. And this is exciting because I want to show you that you can set multiple rules within the same CSS selector. So here we've already got our CSS selector to say, hey, whenever you see a div, I want you to do these things. Right now it says, whenever you see a div, make the width 300 pixels. And your browser's like, babe, I got you. When I see a div, I'm going to make the width 300 pixels. And I want to say, well, look at this. Gotta point out, always American spelling on color. It's going to make some of you just drive you up a wall. And I say, well, hey, babe, when you see div, and you can call your browser babe, it's fine. Your browser's your friend. So really what I'm doing with the CSS is I'm talking to the browser. I'm saying, hey, babe, when you see a div, make the width 300 pixels, but also make the background color Burlywood. And because all of this is just rectangle, we're just way before I said it was just like, it's a rectangle. It's going to be a rectangle, and that rectangle is going to be brown. Perfect, beautiful, incomparable, and correct. Let's do one more, and then we'll move on to the question and answer. Yeah. There's going to be a ton of this that you're going to have to finish for homework because I'm the meanest teacher in the world. But go ahead and yell at me in the chat. What happens when you get stuck on your homework? What should you do when you get stuck in your homework? And that's not a hypothetical question. Let me know. Maxime, it sounds like you're stuck. Give me just a second. And once I finish this, we'll go through that together. Yeah. So the text is centered inside the div element. Currently, the div is specified in pixels, px. Ooh, we're going to change the width property value to be 80% of its parent element. Yeah, Sadiq. Google on the forum. Or if you're me, if you're a privacy weirdo, DuckDuckGo in the forum. Yeah, head to the forum. Yeah. And it can, you can copy and paste your code over there if you get stuck. You can include a screenshot if you really want. Somebody's going to be and we'll have there's the forum. We'll have a bunch of so this is the responsive. So this is the beta course. Yeah. So this is the one way at the bottom of the free code camp curriculum. Look at the documentation. What we're going to do here is we've got 300 pixels and it's asking us to change this to 80%. And you say, Jess, what the heck? 80% of what? And I said, be cool, be cool. It's 80% of its parents' width. So in order to understand that, so this div, what is the parent of this div? Let's look at this together. I'm going to come into the index. I'm going to make you a little bit smaller. I'm going to make you a lot bit smaller. I'm going to come in here. Oh, Miko, you're far too kind. And we're going to find that div. Found it. I found the div. What is the parent of this div? What perfect Sadiq. I adore you. So the parent of this div is body. This div lives inside the body element. So the element that wraps it is the body element. Ooh, Ashwar, I love this question. Where is it? If we remove the width property, then will the color be applied to the whole page? Come on. You know what we do when we don't know. We get weird. Like, definitely experiment. You're absolutely right. So if we take out the width element, it just takes up the whole space of that rectangle of that div. Perfect. Let's go ahead and check our code. Everything's fine. And now I am going to be super excited to change tracks. If you've just joined us to go through this, we are done with the core of our lesson for today. And let's go ahead and look at the curriculum. Look at how much, we're going to come all the way to the bottom. Deep breath. We've got so much homework. Yesterday, I only did about a third of it with you all because I'm a terrible teacher and I'm mean. And you've got all of this to try and do for homework. You don't have to finish it tonight. You've got a whole week to do these first 3 sections. Everything's fine, but I definitely recommend going in orders. If you find that the pace of this is still way, way too fast, go ahead and shout at me in the forum. I'll see if maybe we can add we'll talk about whether or not some supplemental sessions for question and answer might be useful. Maybe some sort of Saturday session where I grab some tea and just unstick people. That might be a good way to go. But if you're super, super stuck and can't catch up, yell at me. So where are we? Who had a question? Yeah, I'm going to come back up because somebody asked a really good question. Somebody was stuck, and I want to see if we can unstick you. I'm scrolling up real slow. Maxime, okay, so we're through step 12. Let's come back to step 12. So it's asking for style and the H1 tags. So here, the first thing I want you to do is to go to restart step. And that's just going to erase everything that's already happened. I'm not saying you've done it wrong, but like whenever you're real stuck and it's not moving, just delete everything first. Just reset everything first. It's the magic of version control. Version control is here to help you. And what we're going to do is we're going to cheat a little bit in a friendly way. We're going to copy the example here, and we can literally copy and paste this one. And that'll give us a little bit, ooh, the formatting is terrible. That'll give us a little bit of something to work with. Yeah. That's still messy. And what we're going to do here is we're going to change these keywords to be the keywords we want. So here it says element property value. We're going to center our H1 element. So we're going to take where it says element, and the element we want to change is H1. That's super chill. We can do that. The property we want to change is text align. So here where it says property, I'm going to say text align instead. And here the value is going to be center. I'm going to do that one as well. And I think when I say check my code, it's going to be okay with. It's all right with that. Maxime, can you give that a try as well? So just copy and paste that over and replace element with H1, property with text align, and value with center. And let's see if that doesn't unstick you. Yeah. When in doubt, cheat a little. I used to be a classroom teacher. You could tell I was just the worst. Where I'm like, yeah, look it up. It's fine. Let's come down and see what great question. Oh, I love this. If we find typos in the course, where can we report? If you find typos in the course, you get to have a open source contribution. You can hear me tap, tap, tapping. It's not because I'm ignoring you. It's not because I'm playing video games. It's because I'm grabbing a link, which I'm going to drop into the chat as well. See something. So we're going to look, if you find a typo in the course, or if you find something broken, or if you find something weird, you can get an open source contribution, which is so exciting. And if you do this, you better put that on your resume. You better put it on your resume, CV, however you call it, wherever you're based. You better get credit for that, or I will come to your house and yell at you. So contribute to our open source code base on GitHub. And what it's going to do is this is going to give you a bunch of information about how you do this. It's actually a lot of work to fix a typo. You've got to sign up for a GitHub account, which you're probably going to need as a programmer anyway. You've got to go and find it. You've got to raise an issue. So you've got to learn how to raise an issue. There's a bunch of different things to do. But this is going to give you a lot of help us fix bugs in the learning platform. Yeah. You can do this in Gitpod. Let's look at this together. Open in Gitpod. Oh, actually, I'm not logged into GitHub. I lied. GitHub password. Oof, what's my master password? Can y'all see? Nah, y'all can't see. Everything's fine. I use a password manager, which I really recommend. So continue with GitHub. And I don't just use a password manager. I also use two-factor authentication. So let's talk really briefly about what both of those things are. Wow. So a password manager is a computer program that stores a bunch of really difficult to remember passwords in it. I use it because you never want to reuse the same password on different systems. And humans, we're bad at remembering things like passwords. And two-factor authentication is using an extra token or an extra procedure in addition to your password. If you've got something really valuable like your GitHub account, you probably want to put on two-factor authentication, yeah? So here, Oh, let's go ahead and stop sharing for just a second. We're going to share a window instead of a tab just so we can see what's going on. I've gone to contribute to the free code camp curriculum. I've said open in Gitpod, and you will need to have a GitHub account to do this. But this is going to be something that lets us go ahead and edit this right here in the browser. So it's going to be a sandbox, just like free code camp. And that's going to let us do things like fix that one little typo we saw. Yeah, that's going to take a little while to set up. So we're going to leave it alone for now. We're going to come back to that if that sorts itself out in a moment. If not, you know what? This is such a good question. I'm going to see if I can get somebody to join us for a Thursday session to talk to us really explicitly about making open source contributions. Yeah, let's go ahead, and this is a really good question. Here's the documentation. We've dropped that into chat. Contribute to the free code camp code base. I want to make sure that while we're waiting on this, Gitpod has really taken its time today. While we're waiting on Gitpod, let's answer some of these other questions. I hope I'm not ignoring you. Archie, can we use Evan Rep? Perfect, amazing. So for those of you who haven't seen these yet, there's different ways to set width or height. There's really different measurements we use in Webland. So far, the two we've looked at are percent. So we set something to, let's go back. Hey, we don't know. We want step 26. We've used 80% and we've used pixels. And then rem are also going to be different ones. And we'll learn about those later on in the CSS one. You know what? When you get to use them depends on how fast you move through the curriculum. You could be using them by the end of the day. Oh, Archie, we've got a real specific one. At step 44, the HTML must have p tags on the same line. Let's see. Curriculum. You know what? This isn't going to work well for me because I haven't done step 44 yet, have I? Step 44. It says 0 just because I went away and came back. It's not actually going to, see, it's not going to take your progress away. Step 44. Position the other P elements to be on the same line with no space between them. Just like this? Is that what it wants? Oh, yeah. Weird. Why? Like, I haven't done this one yet. It's the new curriculum. Is this what it wants? It's weird that French vanilla is doing that. Okay, cool. It literally just wants you to delete the spacing. I imagine they fix the spacing for caramel macchiato, punk bullet spice, hazelnut mocha in the next one. I bet they do that with CSS styling. So step 44, just delete all the spaces so the title and the price come right after each other. I know, where you're like, it can't be that simple. I'm like, apparently it's that simple. So I think this is just setting you up for step 45, where we're going to clean that up a little bit. Ooh, Maria, I love this question. Why do we add the type of text CSS to the CSS? Because, I mean, browsers are very complicated, very serious program, but they're not that smart. I mean, they're very smart in a lot of ways. They're very fault tolerant, but when you're giving it a CSS file, it's going to make everybody's life easier if you say, hey, browser, what this is a CSS file. And that's really what you're doing when you say type text CSS. You say, hey, I'm giving you this link. Just as a heads up, here's what it is. Just to make it friendlier and easier for your browser. What really your users' browsers. Browsers are your friends. They want to help you wherever possible. And this is just you being really solid back to them. Ooh, if I create a div and make it empty, what is the width of the div? That is a question. What is the default size for a div? Is it nothing? Is it All block level elements inherit the width of their parent elements by default. Haha. So Stack Overflow. Oh, I was going to say Stack Overflow with no citations, but cool. By default, an empty div will be the width of its parent. Let's throw that answer into the chat. I didn't know that, but looking it up, that feels kind of common sense. That feels fine. Step 9, everything's working. Oh, hang on. You've got step 9 and it's working, but it won't run. I'd, as a general rule, go ahead and reset it and just do it again to see if that fixes it. Sometimes the tests are just weird. Sometimes life is unfair. Let me know if resetting that and typing it out again works. That'll usually fix it. Marcellus is saying, hey, let's get a link to the forum group. Heck yeah, let's get you a link to the forum group. If I could ask my beautiful assistant to drop that both into chat and throw a banner up, that would be super cool. I'm always picking on Mervin. Oh, everybody say, hey, Mervin. Mervin is helping me out and does all the moderation. And it's really unfair because Mervin is not just smarter than me, but also more interesting and more personable. Mervin, were you running a class about dinosaurs recently? Just in all ways, much, much cooler than I am. So here's a really cool. Can you skip HTML elements like F1 and go to H3? Can you skip H1 and go all the way to H3? Or yeah, you can, but generally you're going to want to follow that flow because it carries semantic meaning. When I say, hey, H1, that's my most important heading. The second most important is usually going to be an H2. Maybe if you're going to add more content later, you say, here's my heading. Here's my heading. Here's my subheading. Here's my subheading. If you're going to add that subheading in later, maybe you want to skip H2 for a while. But generally, that H1 to H6 flow is more about carrying meaning than about the size. Yeah. How to add a style sheet? Yeah. Oop. Okay. Sorry. I'll stop clicking. I'm rubbish. So, how to add a style sheet? Let's find it in the curriculum. How do we add a style sheet? Y'all are going to get to see me tab for a second. Boop, 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 boop. Div, brown, viewports. Ha! Step 16 and 17 will show you how to add a style sheet. So go back into this again, take a look at step 16 and step 17. And of course, you know what you're doing and it's going to be fine and I could talk you through it. But doing it one more time is going to feel a lot more solid than me telling you how to do it. Aren't I mean? Cool. If you're using an image, you don't have to use the figure element. Just use the figure element if you have a caption that you want to associate with that image. Most of the time when you see images out on the web, people haven't used the figure element, and that's super okay. Everything's okay. Can text align be replaced with a line item? Yes. So I think you could align in many cases, the way this looks might look the same. I'd recommend you use text align instead, just because that's going to be the most solid way to make sure that you've got the same experience across different devices. If I say I want this text aligned to the right or left or center, it might be a little bit more dependable than aligning the div or aligning the child element that the text sits in. So you can get the same behavior with in different ways, but I might always stick with the simplest and the most semantic one whenever possible. Yeah, it's a really good question. I like that. I mean, all of these are good questions. I don't mean to pick on individual questions for being especially cool. So Maxime, it sounds like you're still stuck. Go ahead and jump onto the forums and we'll try and unstick you there. I'm so sorry, my love. Yeah. So we've got the forum link. Oh, oh. So what if somebody's from a non-English speaking country? This is such a good question. And this is a little bit complex. So we're not going to be learning about this within the scope of this class. But what you're really asking here is how can I localize my website for people who speak different languages? Um, and there are some really exciting ways you can do that. So you can create different versions of your website for everybody. You can create translatable strings and then use localization behind the scenes. Um, but really, this question, which is such a good question, is difficult to answer in a one or two line thing because it's an entire field. So this is the field of localization. And I really like this question because when we talk about, and we're going to talk about the idea of accessibility a lot in this course. Um, and I've already sort of yelled at you all about philosophy ones, but really, accessibility is a philosophical concept, but a very, very practical one. Like accessibility is something you must learn about. I'm very, very keen to say you can call yourself a programmer right now. You can call yourself a web developer right now. But to be a good programmer, to be a good web developer, you need to know about and be dedicated to accessibility. And this really comes from the philosophy that if you're building something from the web, there's not just a business need to make sure that the most people possible can access it, but there's also an ethical need behind that. And in a lot of places, there's a legal need. You can get in trouble if you build websites that people can't access. And when we think about that, we often think about screen reader users. And I think that's really valuable, or people using other kinds of assistive technology. And that's really valuable. But this is a really good point. Thinking about accessibility from a language perspective or a device perspective or a speed perspective is really, really valuable. So, this is such a good question. I'd recommend it if you're interested in this to start doing some reading around the field of localization. And I'll be so excited to chat to you about it in the forum. Thank you for asking like one of my favorite questions today. Oh, here's a super easy set of questions. Tomorrow's session, same time, my love. We will be right back here. I will be just as sleepy and useless. Where can you find this video after the class? It'll be posted to the forums, or you could just hang out in the Class Central YouTube channel where that'll go up afterwards. Hey, in this class, are we to learn about typography? Just a little bit. So, for those of you who haven't heard about this, typography is the art or the craft of text. We'll learn a little bit of typography, but Git and GitHub will have a guest coming to talk to us, not this Thursday, but next Thursday, which is the someone help me. What's next Thursday? Next Thursday, we'll have somebody coming to talk to us about Git and GitHub. Yeah. Do we think? Yeah, we think it's going to take 10 or 20, between 10 and 20 hours a week to finish this bootcamp. Big thing to stress is if you fall behind, your work is always going to be there on Free Code Camp. The extra stuff we're adding, the videos and the forum, and I'm allowed to say we're adding a Discord. We're going to be adding a Discord as well. Hey. Um, Check the forum for more information. These are all just supports to help you try and complete the Free Code Camp curriculum. If you fall behind, you can always catch up. Your work on Free Code Camp is not going anywhere, I promise, my love. Everything's chill. Ooh, which will be prioritized? The width attribute or the CSS width property when applied to an image tag? I don't know. Um, wow, I don't know at all. I'm gonna have to heck, this is not me making excuses. I mean, it feels like an excuse because I'm out of coffee. Whenever you're not sure, what can you do? You can ask an adult, and I genuinely don't know. You can get weird. I'd recommend experimenting with this. So go ahead and set the width attribute in HTML and then set it in CSS and see which one is applied. So set the width to 1 in HTML and set the width to 100 in CSS and then switch them and see what that does. Yeah. I mean, Yeah. So yeah, what do we think about adding GitHub and Git to this course? We'd have to really expand the scope of this course. We're really at the moment just keeping the scope down to here's what you can do in free code camp to make sure that folks who aren't able to join us in real time still have a good chance of this. Our Thursday sessions talking about stuff like Git and GitHub are to add those extra real world skills. So I was totally thrown off by step 41 because I had no idea that white space between the elements had any effect. Ooh, please explain how putting the P elements on different lines makes a difference. I will not explain. I will give you the documentation. And that's because I'm about to have to get sorted for work. So there are two different types of ways that elements flow. And a block level element, and a block level element says, hey, when you make another block level element, it's going to start on a new line. And a P element is a block level element. By default, that's going to start on a new line. Let me get that. Whereas an inline element kind of sounds like what it does, isn't it? That it's going to come up and it's going to share a line unless you specify. So what we're doing by deleting that white space is moving those block line elements. So you all are absolutely, you're not wrong. A Phaedrus is saying, you know what? If we really wanted if we really wanted our cafe menu to look beautiful, and if we wanted it to carry a lot of semantic meaning and be really accessible, a table would be a really good choice. I don't disagree with you at all. And a part of that is because I'm very old. And back in the day, we just put everything in tables in HTML. I'm going to do a quick scan to make sure nobody's super, super stuck and nothing's terrible. And I'm going to, there's a lot of really, really good questions in here. Oh, are we going to learn Flex and Grid on this course? My love, we will absolutely look at Flex and Grid in this course. And because I'm terrible at CSS, I will be terrible at both Flexbox and Grid. So we'll get to relearn them together. So I'm going to have to head off to get to my proper deadly serious job. It's not so deadly serious. Let's take a quick look at the curriculum. I'm going to come take a deep breath all the way down. So please try and get through yesterday's, which was doing all of the HTML, building a cat photo up. And if you can, please try and complete the CSS ones as well. When we come back tomorrow, we're going to be learning about CSS colors. And some of you have previewed this a little bit by asking about hex codes, by asking about RGB. We're going to learn really explicitly about that. I'm so sorry if I didn't get a chance to answer your questions today, but come and give me a fuss in the forums. That's exactly what they're there for. And what's really exciting about the forums is that your peers, people much, much smarter than me, are going to be there wanting to help you out as well. So try and get through the HTML one if you can. Try and get through the first CSS block, the assignments we were working on today if you can. And tomorrow we're going to be coming back and we're going to be starting to look at learn CSS by building a set of colored markers. It'll be at the exact same time and it'll be the same format as today. We'll look at the lessons, we'll talk a little bit about philosophy, and then I'll answer your questions at the end. Cool. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to let you go. I hope you have the easiest possible morning or afternoon. Oh gosh, I forgot your most important homework. So please try and finish both the HTML and CSS sections. But even more importantly, you are absolutely obligated to please, if it's not a bother, have the most relaxing rest of the day that you possibly can. If you're watching this late at night, you are not off the hook for this homework. You have to have the most relaxing and soft and forgiving to yourself day you can tomorrow instead of today. So your homework, try and get through the CSS section and be as chill and gentle and easy to yourself as possible. I'm going to go ahead and let you go. Please, again, have the chillest day you can. I will see you all tomorrow. And then on Thursday, we're going to come back um, and talk about learning how to learn, which is very exciting, how to learn programming. I'll let you all go. If I didn't get your question, come and fuss at me in the forum, all right? All right. Bye, everybody.